Imagine a house so famous that people in Hollywood lower their voices when they talk about it, as if the walls might still be listening. Not a spooky castle in the middle of nowhere, but a bright white mansion above the city of dreams, built for money, beauty, and fame. A place where stars once laughed by the pool, where music played late into the night, where the lights of Los Angeles glittered below like a sea of fallen stars. Yet whenever someone moved in, the same thing seemed to follow them: tragedy, scandal, fear. But why would a house built for glamour become known as Hollywood's most cursed mansion? Tonight, we're going to a hill above Hollywood, to a street called Cielo Drive, to a mansion that was never meant to be a horror story. It was meant to be a dream, a perfect escape for the rich and powerful, hidden behind gates, trees, and silence. From the outside, it looked like safety. Inside, it would become a stage for some of the darkest moments in modern Hollywood history. People tried to rebuild, remodel, and even erase it from the map. Yet the story never left. Because the curse did not stay locked behind one front door. This is not a ghost story with shadows in the hallway or doors that slam on their own. This is a different kind of haunting. This mansion was cursed by human choices, by obsession with fame, by violence that echoed far outside its garden walls. Reporters, fans, and true crime shows have talked about it for years. But beneath the headlines lies a deeper question. What happens when a house becomes a symbol of everything broken in the dream factory called Hollywood, and no one can decide what to do with it? To understand why this mansion became so infamous, we have to go back to a time before the blood, before the flashing cameras, before anyone whispered the word curse. High in the hills above Los Angeles, the land that would one day hold Hollywood's most cursed mansion was quiet and empty. There was no sound but wind in the trees and the distant hum of the young city below. It was just another patch of California earth waiting for someone with money and a dream. No one yet knew what that dream would cost. In the late 1940s and 50s, Hollywood was building a new image for itself. The studios were powerful, stars were gods, and the hills above town became their private playground. Producers, directors, and actors wanted homes that felt like their own kingdoms. European-style villas, French country houses, and modern glass boxes rose above the smog. The future site of the mansion on Cielo Drive was shaped into exactly that kind of fantasy. It was designed not just to be a house, but to be a lifestyle. But lifestyles are fragile things, especially when they sit on top of pressure and secrets. The mansion that stood on Cielo Drive did not look cursed at first glance. It looked elegant and calm. It had white walls, dark beams, and a wide roof that spread like wings. Roses climbed near the windows. There was a pool that caught the afternoon light. Inside were cozy rooms with wooden ceilings and stone fireplaces, not cold marble halls. It felt more like a European country home than a flashy Los Angeles palace. It seemed like a safe place to escape the craziness below. That feeling of safety was the first illusion this house ever sold. Over the years, different owners came and went. Musicians stayed there. A few rising stars used it as a hideaway. Sometimes it was a main home, other times a rented retreat. It had the kind of privacy that people in Hollywood pay a lot of money for. You could drive up the long road, slip through the gate, and disappear from the rest of the world. That was the promise of the place. A promise that if you were inside those walls, the cameras and gossip and pressure outside could not touch you. But no promise stays perfect in this town. By the late 1960s, a young couple moved into the mansion whose names would forever be tied to it. He was a director whose films shocked and impressed critics around the world. She was an actress with huge eyes, a warm smile, and a rising career. Together, they seemed like the perfect Hollywood story. They had beauty, talent, and friends in every corner of the industry. The house on Cielo Drive became their nest, their love home, their quiet space above the noise where they planned a future family. Or at least, that is what they thought they were building. The woman was named Sharon Tate. The man was Roman Polanski. She was pregnant, excited, and glowing with that strange mix of innocence and fame that Hollywood loves to photograph. He was often away working on films, flying between countries, always chasing the next vision. Their friends came to the house for dinners, drinks, and long talks on the patio. Music played, records spun, cigarettes glowed in the night. It did not feel cursed. It felt like the heart of a tight circle, a group of young people who believed the golden age of their lives was just getting started. They were wrong in ways no one could imagine. The house on Cielo Drive shined at the top of the hill, but down in the city, something darker was growing. A stranger who wanted to be a musician, a man filled with anger and twisted dreams, was slowly building his own following. He felt the industry had rejected him. He believed the world owed him something. He talked about war, chaos, and a new world that would rise out of violence. Most people never heard his name. Those who did thought he was just another failed musician with wild ideas. But in his mind, and in the minds of the young followers around him, the story was already burning. That man's name was Charles Manson. He drifted through Los Angeles in the music scene, trying to impress producers, playing demo tapes, hoping someone would give him a chance. One of the people he crossed paths with briefly had a connection to the house on Cielo Drive before Sharon and Roman ever lived there. When that connection faded, Manson did not forget. In his mind, the house became a symbol of the rich and famous people who he believed had turned their backs on him. He twisted that anger into a plan that had nothing to do with the people who actually lived there now. That was the first cruel twist of the curse. In the summer of 1969, Los Angeles was hot, tense, and changing. The peace and love image of the 60s was starting to crack. Protests filled the streets. Young people were leaving home, looking for meaning in strange new groups. Manson and his followers lived outside the city, but he watched the news and listened to songs, and he believed he saw secret messages about revolution. He told his followers that a war was coming and that they would play a special role in starting it. They listened to him, trusted him, and did not see where he was leading them. The mansion on Cielo Drive waited in silence. On the night of August 8th, 1969, a car drove up to the gate of the mansion. Inside were young people who looked like any other kids their age. Long hair, simple clothes, calm faces. But they were not going to a party. They were going to carry out Manson's orders. What happened next has been told and retold in news reports, books, and films. We will not repeat every detail here. It is enough to say that by the time the sun rose, 5 people were dead inside and around the house. Sharon Tate, her unborn child, her friends. A night of relaxed conversation and music turned into pure terror. The house that promised safety had become a crime scene. The city woke up to a nightmare. Headlines screamed about rich people killed in the hills. Rumors spread faster than facts. People thought the killers might be part of a cult, a gang, or some new violent movement. For months, no one knew who had done it or why. The beautiful house on Cielo Drive sat behind police tape and camera crews. Reporters filmed the gate, the driveway, the glimpses of a place where normal life had ended. In homes across America, people saw the images and felt a chill. If this could happen to a famous actress in her own mansion, then no place was truly safe. That feeling did not go away. When the police finally connected the murders to Charles Manson and his followers, the story only grew stranger. These were not trained killers. They were young, lost people who had given their minds over to a man who promised them meaning. They had gone up to the house not because they hated Sharon Tate, but because the address was still linked in Manson's memory to an old grudge. That was part of what made it so horrifying. The victims had never met the man who sent their killers. The curse of the house had nothing to do with ghosts. It had to do with the way one address became the target for a twisted dream. The trials that followed turned the mansion into something more than just a place. Photos of the front gate appeared in newspapers around the world. The words, Cielo Drive, became a symbol of chaos, fear, and the dark side of the 60s. Manson stared from courtroom benches with a strange smile. His followers carved symbols into their foreheads. Cameras captured every detail. Meanwhile, the house itself was locked, quiet, and rotting in the shadows. It was still there, still beautiful in shape, but anyone who looked at it now saw only violence and loss. The dream was gone. In its place was a legend. For a while, no one wanted to live there. How do you move your furniture into a place where such horror took place? How do you swim in the same pool, cook in the same kitchen, sleep in the same rooms? The property became a problem for anyone who owned it. On paper, it was still a valuable mansion in an amazing location. In reality, it was a place many people believed was poisoned by what had happened. Some people thought they might be strong enough to handle it. Others saw only opportunity in buying a famous address. The curse did not care why they came. In the early 70s, new owners tried to bring life back into the mansion. They painted, repaired, and tried to wipe away visible traces of the crime. Guests were invited again. Music played by the pool again. But there was a weight in the air that would not lift. Some visitors said the house felt strange and heavy. Others said they did not feel anything at all. But they noticed that conversations always ended up going back to that one night. Even if no one wanted to talk about it, they did. The story lived in the walls because it lived in every person's mind who stepped through the door. As years passed, Hollywood itself changed. New stars rose, old scandals faded. Yet the story of the Cielo Drive mansion stayed stubbornly alive. True crime books mentioned it. Late-night hosts joked darkly about it. Fans drove through the hills, trying to catch a glimpse of the gate. Some people even stole pieces of the property. A tile, a rock, a bit of the address number. They wanted souvenirs from a cursed place, as if owning a piece of it might give them a strange connection to the story. They did not stop to think about what they were really bringing home. In the 1990s, the mansion found a new kind of tenant. A musician rented it and turned part of it into a recording space. The property had privacy, a vibe, and a long driveway where fans could not bother anyone. It seemed perfect for late-night recording sessions. At first, it was just another dark chapter in the music world, but that tenant later admitted something important. He said that he eventually realized he was living, working, and making art in a place of real suffering. He had been treating a crime scene like a spooky backdrop for his image. When that realization hit him, he felt ashamed. That musician was Trent Reznor of 9 Inch Nails. He recorded part of a famous album in the mansion, then moved out. Years later, he returned to visit the new house that had replaced it and realized that the site felt different without the old building. It no longer held the same physical shadow. He took with him one object from the original house, a front door, and installed it in his own studio for a while. But after a conversation with a member of Sharon's family, he understood the pain that object still carried for them. He took the door down. Once again, the house was forcing people to ask themselves a hard question. How far is too far when it comes to using tragedy for art or fame? The pressure to do something about the mansion kept growing. Neighbors were tired of slow cars crawling past the gate. The families of the victims were tired of seeing their loved one's last home turned into a stop on horror tours. The owners were tired of trying to rent or sell a place that always came with a dark footnote. So at last, a decision was made. The original house was torn down. In its place rose a new, larger, more modern property. Different shape, different layout, different energy. Some people thought that would finally break the curse. They believed that if the walls were gone, the story might fade away. But that is not what happened. The story of Hollywood's most cursed mansion did not die with the bulldozers. It transformed. Tourists still drove up Cielo Drive. They knew that the new building was not the same house, but the ground was the same. The view was the same. The distance from the city was the same. Fans posted photos and argued online about whether the new house deserved the same fear and respect as the old one. Locals sighed and pulled their curtains closed. The curse had moved from bricks and wooden beams into something bigger. It had moved into the culture. Meanwhile, something else had happened. The story of the mansion became one of Hollywood's favorite mirrors. People began to use it as a way to talk about other things. It became a symbol of the danger of worshiping fame, a symbol of how the lives of celebrities can be taken apart and sold as entertainment, a symbol of how one man's rage and rejection can explode into the lives of strangers. The house was not just a cursed mansion anymore. It was a lesson no one had properly learned, even though they kept telling the story over and over again. Not every person who lived on that hill after the crime had some dramatic downfall. That is the truth that ruins a simple ghost story. Some owners lived quiet lives and simply tried to enjoy their home. They put in new kitchens, hired gardeners, and kept to themselves. Yet even they could not fully escape the weight of the address. Guests would ask about the history. Delivery drivers would recognize the street and fall silent. Any real estate listing had to decide how much to reveal. It was like trying to cover a scar with makeup. You can hide the shape from far away, but up close, it is still there. Every time the story of the mansion returns to the news, it seems to ask the same question. Who really carries the curse? Is it the land itself? Is it the people who choose to live there? Or is it the rest of us, the ones who cannot stop watching, reading, and retelling? We turn the worst night of these victims' lives into content. We put their faces in thumbnails and their names in titles. We drive by the hill and take photos. We say we are shocked, but we keep coming back to the same story. The mansion gave us a dark gift, and we never stopped opening it. Think about the symbolism for a second. Hollywood sells the dream of safety above the crowd. Work hard, get famous, move into a mansion on a hill, and you will be protected. You will be behind gates. You will be above the noise. But the house on Cielo Drive proved that this promise is a lie. The killers did not care about the gate. They did not care about the view. They did not care about the money that had paid for the roof. What they cared about was what that address meant in their twisted minds. Fame did not save anyone that night. It drew danger to their door. Over the years, the phrase "most cursed mansion" has been thrown at many places in and around Hollywood. Some people say it belongs to other estates, where stars drank themselves to death, lost fortunes, or drowned in lonely pools. There are mansions where studio heads hid secret families, houses where young actors took their own lives, estates that changed hands again and again, as if no one could stay happy there for very long. Hollywood is full of beautiful boxes that hide pain. But the mansion on that hill above Cielo Drive remains the one story that most people think of first, because its curse did not stay private. It changed the way people locked their doors. It changed the way celebrities thought about security. It changed the way the public saw the bright young faces on posters. Suddenly, fame did not only mean power. It also meant risk. A famous face could become a target, a symbol, a stand-in for everything someone else hated. That idea still makes people uneasy today. When you see fans outside a house, screaming a name, it is easy to forget how thin the line is between love and obsession. The mansion that was supposed to be a nest for new life showed us that line in the cruelest way. There is also the question of the unborn child. Sharon Tate was 8.5 months pregnant. She and her husband were planning baby names, painting rooms, imagining a future filled with small toys and soft blankets on those polished floors. That future ended in one night. Many people who talk about the curse of the mansion say that this is the part that never leaves their minds. A home is supposed to be the safest place to bring a new life into the world. When a home becomes the place where that life ends before it even begins, something in our human sense of order breaks. That break is part of the curse, too. As time passes, each new generation hears the story in a different way. Some teenagers first learn the name Charles Manson as a meme or reference in a song. Later, they find out that real people died, that a real house stood on a real hill, and that a real woman screamed for help that never came. They watch videos, listen to podcasts, maybe even watch films that dramatize the story. For them, the mansion can feel almost like a movie set, something from a script, not from the real world. But then they see old photos of the living room, of Sharon laughing on the patio, of friends sunbathing by the pool, and it hits them. These were normal days in a home before the curse. The neighborhood around the original mansion has tried to move on. New houses stand where older ones once were. Families walk their dogs. Children ride bikes. Delivery drivers drop off food. The city has grown and shifted. But every once in a while, someone stands at the curb and stares up at one particular gate. Maybe they are curious. Maybe they are paying respects. Maybe they are just there because they saw a video and wanted to see it with their own eyes. The street goes quiet for a moment, as if waiting to see what they will do next. Then life moves on, but the story stays. So what does Hollywood's most cursed mansion really represent? It is more than just a crime scene. It is more than just an address. It is the dark reflection of a system that worships beauty and success, but often ignores the people underneath. Sharon Tate was not a symbol. She was a person. Her friends were not characters. They were people. Yet as soon as they died, the industry, the media, and the public turned them into something else. Into headlines, into cautionary tales, into decoration for the legend of a house. That transformation is one of the most chilling parts of the entire story. The curse of the mansion is also about timing. The murders happened at the end of the 1960s, just as many people were saying that the world was changing for the better. Peace, love, and freedom were the slogans. Young people believed they were building something new. Then this horror hit the heart of the culture they loved. It felt like a door slamming shut on innocence. Suddenly, the hills above Hollywood did not look peaceful anymore. They looked like hiding places for things no one wanted to see. In that sense, the curse spread far beyond the property lines of one estate. Some people say that the curse is simply our own need to find patterns in tragedy. They point out that terrible things happen in ordinary houses too, in small apartments, in quiet suburbs. They say that calling this mansion cursed is a way of pretending that evil only lives in certain special places, instead of admitting thus that it can appear anywhere. There is truth in that. But there is another truth as well. Certain stories grab us and do not let go. Certain locations become symbols, whether we want them to or not. The mansion above Cielo Drive is one of those locations. It became a container for our fear. Ask yourself this. If someone offered you a chance to buy a huge mansion with a beautiful view in a great location, for a price that seemed almost too good to be true, but then told you this was the site of some of the worst crimes in Hollywood history, would you still take it? Some people say yes. Brick is just brick. Others say no amount of money could make them sleep in those rooms. That split opinion is part of why this story stays alive. It forces us to decide what we really believe about places and the energy we think they hold. Today, the land where the old mansion stood holds a newer, bigger house. It has its own story, its own owners, its own private joys and struggles. Yet when people talk about Hollywood's most cursed mansion, they almost never mean the building that stands there now. In their minds, they still see the white country-style house with its beams and balconies. They see Sharon in the doorway, friends laughing in the yard, and the gate that could not keep out what was coming. The old house lives on like a ghost made of memory. No bulldozer can touch that. In the end, the dark story of this mansion is not really about walls or roofs or pools. It is about what happens when fame, obsession, and violence meet in one place and then echo outward through time. It is a story of a dream home turned into a warning sign. A story of how a single night can change the way a whole city sees itself. A story of a curse that is not magic, but human. A curse made of the choices people make and the way we choose to remember them. When we look up at that hill now, we do not only see a house, we see a question. How far will we go to chase a dream? How far will we go to feed our hunger for dark stories? And what happens to the real lives caught in the middle. The mansion on Cielo Drive does not answer those questions for us. It only stands there in our imagination, silent and glowing in the night, while we decide what to do with its memory. So the next time you see a perfect Hollywood mansion in a movie, with big glass windows and a glittering city below, remember this story. Remember that houses can hold more than furniture. They can hold hope, fear, love, anger, and sometimes the worst thing of all. They can hold the truth about who we really are. The dark story of Hollywood's most cursed mansion is not just about a place. It is about us. And that is why this story will not end anytime soon.